Today on Spectrum, we visit the Garden Isle, Kauai, an island of dramatic scenery and stark contrasts, where birds flock, artwork is sketched, paintings displayed, and the famous Mokihana Maililei is gathered and composed. Where legends are still told and the legacy left by the missionaries and the sugar planters is examined. They say Kauai lies in the track of the trade winds. In the 18th century, Kauai was the first point of Hawaiian contact with the outside world. Captain James Cook arrived aboard the first of many British ships of exploration, seeking a safe port for English fur traders where they might be wooded and watered. Once in Kauai, the voyagers discovered that the Hawaiians living here had perfected an ancient method of producing a highly valued commodity, salt. By creating a series of salt ponds, the Hawaiians of Kauai were able to convert seawater into salt crystals, which were then used as a fish preservative and a condiment. This was an improvement over the voyagers' previous experience in Tahiti, where the natives dipped every mouthful of food into seawater before eating it. These salt ponds are an example of native ingenuity seizing the advantage of Kauai's long, dry season. In olden times, Kauai was the only island to suffer from famine due to drought. Yet to the Hawaiian, land was just as vital as water. The two were inseparable as the source of sustenance. For survival, the chief and his dependents had to control three kinds of land: mountain for wood, birds, and fresh water; cooler land or level uplands to build houses upon, to grow pili grass for thatching roofs, and for dry land taro fields. Finally, kahakai, the land marked by the sea, where taro and coconuts were planted, the ocean was fished, nets were spread, and inland fish ponds were cultivated. Legend tells us that this fish pond was built by the Menehunis in a single night. These little work people stood in 2 rows for 20 miles across the southern hills from Makaweli Valley, passing the stones from hand to hand. Today, busy hands now select freshwater prawns from ponds well planted with these delicacies. Using nets, baskets, and boxes, aquaculture is the name given to this new form of cultivation in Kauai. The arrival of missionaries marked a new era in 19th century Kauai. At the urging of the Hawaiian people, the Waiole Mission House and Church were founded at Hanalei. Following the ministers came missionary teachers such as Abner and Lucy Wilcox, who began teaching Hawaiians how to read and write their own language. Here is Robert Schleck, curator of the Waiole Mission House Museum.
Abner and Lucy Wilcox came here to Waiole Mission House in 1846, along with their 7 sons. They came here as missionary teachers. The missionaries' influence was religious as well as educational, and the Wilcoxes trained their 7 sons down in their mission school. Their influence continued with the education of several of their sons on the mainland, who went to the mainland to study new technologies which could be used here in Hawaii. The greatest influence of missionaries on Kauai is, of course, religion, and this is obvious through churches here at Hanalei and around the island.
Among the missionary descendants, several chose to become sugar planters. Here's Barnes Resnick on plantation life in Kauai.
Plantations on Kauai are interesting as they are in all the islands, but they're especially interesting because the earliest sugar grown and the beginnings of the sugar industry in Hawaii were right here on Kauai in the 1830s at Koloa. By the time of annexation, by 1898, you had here on this island, you had 9 plantations in operation. That's interesting today because there are only 4 plantations still operating. But if you start on the west side of the island and run right around to the north shore, you'd find that there were plantations located everywhere growing sugar. The impact of sugar on Kauai, of course, can be measured in several ways. The physical appearance of the island, really the natural history of modern Kauai is so much shaped by sugar. The crop fields themselves, the irrigation systems, the cane haul roads, the former railway track beds, all of those, of course, give us a look of the land that is directly attributable to sugar. But the impact of sugar is seen in social ways as well. If you had 9 plantations, that's where people were living. They were living on the plantations. They were living in camps, and of course, as we know, each plantation had more than one camp. At the time, let's say, of annexation or 1900, Grove Farm had 4 camps. Later expanded that to more than 6. And if you look at the plantations in terms of the social impact, it's the multicultural life of the plantations that give Hawaii its own unique history. People beginning, of course, with the Chinese starting to work with Native Hawaiians on the plantations, and followed by Portuguese and Japanese, and then, of course, by Filipinos. You then have people bringing their own culture and planting that here in Hawaii and adapting to Hawaii, to this place, and then finally to the United States itself. And that meant that on each plantation you had people who brought with them their language, their music, their crafts, their family traditions. That is what we identify so much today as a part of Kauai lifestyle.
I've known him for quite a number of years, and he had worked 50 years for one of the plantations on Kauai. Came over when he was 20. In 1975, he came to us to work in a subsidized employment program for senior citizens called the Senior Community Service Employment Program. And we discovered he could make these marvelous baskets, and that he was also an excellent teacher. He's very patient, and he's taught many dozens of seniors to make these beautiful baskets. And they take a long time to make, but they can sell all they make if they want to part with them. They don't always. We think Mr. Gascon is a pretty special man. These baskets are exceptionally durable. They just never wear out. I bought one from him that was 20 years old, and he'd gathered eggs and fish and taken into the ocean, and it was just like new and just strong as carved wood. They really are special baskets.
In the 19th century, a colony was established on Kalapapa, Molokai, to separate cases of confirmed leprosy from the rest of the population. When a was deported by ship to Kalapapa, he was sometimes allowed to take his wife with him, but not always. On Kauai, Ko'olau, the cowboy, contracted leprosy, was deported, and after being denied the company of Pi'ilani, his wife, he jumped ship, defied the authorities, and lived as a desperado on the run. Here's Val Knutson to tell us about Ko'olau, the runaway.
And so he was an outlaw. He had jumped ship, and they fled. And they fled to Kalalau Valley, and it wasn't until 3 or 4 months passed by that the Sheriff Stoltz found out that Ko'olau had not reached Kalapapa, and so he determined to see if he could find him.
What did the sheriff have in mind? Did he know that Ko'olau was armed, dangerous, and an expert shot?
All of a sudden, one day, a young runner came up into the valley saying to Ko'olau, "Sheriff Stoltz is landing, and he's carrying a gun." And Ko'olau was a very fine goat hunter, and he had an Austrian needle gun. I've seen it. It was a pretty good rifle. And he armed himself too and went down on the flat of Kalalau, which is just above the stream on the north side, and there's a great big rock as high as this. And so he stood behind this rock, and Sheriff Stoltz came up the trail. Well, finally, when Stoltz was within 10 or 15 yards, Ko'olau stood out from behind the rock, and he said, "Here I am, I understand you're looking for me." And he had his gun like this. And Sheriff Stoltz said, "You are an outlaw, and I've come to take you, dead or alive." And Ko'olau said, "I'll go to the settlement if I can take my Mapuana with me, my wife with me, rather." And Sheriff Stoltz said, "I have come to take you alone, dead or alive, to the settlement." With that, he lifted his gun, but Ko'olau lifted his gun far quicker and shot Stoltz dead with one shot.
This is big trouble for Ko'olau. Should he continue to run and hide in the trees, the mountains, or the caves of Kalalau Valley? He must have, for when the sheriff failed, others followed.
About a month later, the provisional government, feeling that this sort of a revolt could not occur or be allowed to occur, sent a company of men under a very fine leader to scour Kalalau Valley and to again take the fugitive Ko'olau, dead or alive. Well, they couldn't find him. Ko'olau had been sitting up in his cave watching the ship land and watching these guys run all around the valley, and he was feeling pretty smug, I guess. But however, the last day, the captain was a good mountaineer. He climbed the ridge to see if there wasn't one last chance of finding Ko'olau, and as he pulled himself up over the ledge, he looked right down Ko'olau's gun barrel, and Ko'olau shot him. And as he fell, there were two privates with him, and they all fell off this very narrow ridge and died of the fall. He was already dead, but the two GIs were dead after they fell about 500 feet.
Surely the authorities did not cease their efforts to bring in a lawbreaker. Is his fate now sealed? Indeed, Ko'olau's future looks grim.
After Ko'olau disappeared, that time no one could find him. The hunt was given up. And according to my dad, he was walking up the valley, and there was a nice new house up there. And my father said to Vahini Helala, "Well, whose nice new house is that?" And Vahini Helala said, "Waila, whose indeed?" They had burned Ko'olau's house down as in retribution, I suppose. When they landed there, they went to search his house. It was a grass shack, and they burned it down. So nobody really knows where Ko'olau hid during those last days of the troops leaving, but he was back in Kalalau living, and he died in Kalalau Valley.
Veteran laymaker Ermelie Pomeroy specializes in searching out the indigenous materials that make up her Mokihanamaili leis. She has a keen eye for these woodland materials, most of which go unnoticed by the casual observer.
We made leis when we were little children. It was fun making leis. I have 9 brothers and sisters in my family, and we've always had a beautiful garden in our yard, and whenever May Day came along, we would make leis for that particular celebration. Not all of us liked to make leis. It was mostly my sisters and I who liked to do this. And it was a fun kind of thing. It was only after I got married that I really got into making leis. We used to go up into the forest and gather many of the indigenous kinds of plants to put into these leis because they are beautiful. Each island has a special lei. Here in Kauai, our special lei is the Maile Mokihana lei. Here we have Mokihana. Mokihana grows here in our forest, and it's very seasonal. If you do not know what to look for when you're in the forest, you will never, ever find the Maile or the Mokihana, because it is not fragrant in the forest. After you pick it and crush the bark of the Maile, then you have this wonderful fragrance. After you pick the Mokihana and gather it and pierce it with a needle, then you have the wonderful fragrance of the berry. These two leis are made separately, and then they are entwined together. And when you are through, you have one of the most beautiful and most ancient of all Hawaiian leis. Maile leis are worn by everybody. They're not special leis for special people. Everybody can wear a Maile lei, and this is why the Maile lei is such a popular lei. This lei is gathered in the forest in sections. Each section is tied together to make a longer single lei. These single leis number from 4 to 8 strands. It depends on how much Maile you have, and it depends on how important the person you're going to give this lei to. After you've finished making these single strands of Maile lei, you put them together, and then you twine them together by spinning them. On Kauai, this is how the Maile lei is done. They spin it together. This technique is called vili. On Hawaii, the Maile lei is tied together, and this is called kipu'u. On Oahu and Maui, the Maile lei is braided. In 3 sections are taken and then braided, and this is called hili.
The Kokei Museum, located in the Kokei State Park, is the headquarters for naturalists, bird watchers, hikers, and biologists. Here, local mountain plants and animals may be seen and studied in their natural habitat. Here to introduce us is the museum's association director, Winona Sears.
The Kokei Natural History Museum was started to tell the story of Kokei. The people who live up here find it very, very important that the things that grow here endemically are preserved, that the people who visit this value the things that are only here and found nowhere else in the world. There are many plants that grow only here, and some that are related to others, like the native begonia that has such a beautiful blossom and grows over across the way from here. There are many birds that are found only here. The honey creepers that Darwin was excited about and mentioned in his works, although he didn't come here to study. David Boynton has done some magnificent bird pictures. He has spent a great deal of time up here and has photographed, and his photos are used by the Hawaii Audubon Society to depict things, and also by the Nature Conservancy. And he introduced Cheryl Boynton to us, and she has done some of these marvelous paintings that we're so proud of.
The Boyntons, David and Cheryl, are bird watchers with a purpose. David photographs them and Cheryl draws them, sometimes close at hand.
Yeah, it's lucky we've got the shearwater this time. I guess this is the time of year when the newels do their fledging and leave the nest and head down below to head out to sea for a couple of years. We're lucky we've got this guy in a box with us right now. He is a young one. I think he's still got the down on him, David. Looks like you got a visitor.
This is a threatened species, and every year hundreds of these crash into the lights around Kauai. And I pick up the ones out on the west side and ban them, and as soon as possible release them, take them down to the beach so that they can go fly off to sea. And once they're released, they'll be out at sea for about 4 years or so. But it's a real nice opportunity for Cheryl to be able to have these birds close by for drawing.
I much prefer to work from the live model rather than, say, from study skins from the museum, although those are helpful too, or from photographs. A camera is a good tool to have. It can record details that possibly at a distance your eye can't perceive at the time. And your study skin can give you hands-on information. You can see how the feathers lay and maybe what the colors are, and move the bird around in the light, because of course the colors of the feathers do change with the light. I'd much prefer to be outside where the birds are found, because I think that they lend a sense of life to a painting. The gestures and attitudes that a bird assumes in doing what he does normally. I guess the head is the last place where that down is lost. Could you hold his foot out for me for just a second, please? Yeah. Let's see.
About to get my thumb in his...
He sure is. Hold still, little guy. Yes, you'll be released very soon.
Very rambunctious.
All right, he's got pink webbing between his toes. That's a distinguishing character for the Newell shearwater. Oh, there goes a pair of something. Why don't you take a look and see what you see?
Cheryl Boynton's paintings hang in the Kokei Museum as well as the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. These paintings offer the viewer a colorful opportunity to study the rare forest and seabirds of Kauai. Will they grow so rare that they become extinct? For it is a curious fact that Hawaii is the source of more extinct species of bird life than all of the other continents combined. The Newell shearwater is of special interest to residents of Kauai. Here, local citizens may contribute to the protection and release of these endangered seabirds. The Newell Shearwater Release Program is directed by Dan Moriarty, ranger of the Kilauea Bird Sanctuary, a refuge and home to the local nesting seabirds.
Kilauea Point is a 32-acre site on the northern part of the island of Kauai, and basically its purpose is twofold. It's a nesting area for 4 species of seabirds, and also provides an opportunity for the public to view Hawaiian seabirds, one of the few areas in the state where you can see abundance of seabirds. This is a young wedge-tailed shearwater, you notice that it doesn't have any primary feathers. It's about 5 weeks old. And this is a more mature bird. You notice the primaries are well developed. It's about 2 months old. Normally, these birds burrow in a hole which they dig into the ground. In this case, it looks like the adult took advantage of this piece of plywood laying here and constructed its nest underneath the plywood. The refuge at Kilauea Point offers a number of attractions. There's the historic Kilauea Lighthouse, and of course there's wide vistas of the coastline, and of course the nesting seabirds, the red-footed boobies and the red-tailed tropic birds, the wedge-tailed shearwaters, and the frigate birds.
Kauai is a cohesive community, bound together by its isolation, its heritage of respect for land and sea, and by its people's abiding loyalty to their native soil. If for some reason they should leave Kauai, many feel compelled to return. There is an old adage about this island, coined long ago. It says that all good things come to Kauai at last. Join us again on our next Spectrum.